Jane, you're bringing up something that's so important, these preconceived notions, these biases, these prejudices, if you will, that we have about each other that rural America might have about urban America and vice versa. What are those preconceived notions and how can we get over them? You mentioned my father's, Jesse Jackson 84 and 88 campaigns, and people were surprised to see him going to see the family farmers who were white, who were brown, who were Black, who were all colors, who were all backgrounds. And many of the white farmers would obscure their identities because they said, when I go home, this is going to be a problem. But as he continued to run and cultivate these relationships, which you are doing right now, the barriers came down. I mean, most people don't know that you would be working across these racial and ethnic lines.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And honestly, I talk a lot about your dad's campaign in my book, Harvest the Vote. And when I'm talking to folks in the Democratic Party, when they're trying to struggle, how do they start to reach rural voters again? How do they start to earn that trust? Or as folks are just trying to wrap their brains around how rural people who often are dealing with poverty issues and dealing with, their small businesses closing, just like some of our urban communities are, how can they then support somebody like Donald Trump? And your dad used this famous line. He said, we have to unite the eaters and the feeders. And he was really talking about, you have the producers of, our food living in our rural communities, obviously that everybody in our urban communities also eat. And when we start to unite on an economic message, when we start to unite on a social justice lens, when we start to talk about how big corporations are really screwing both the family farmers and the single mom in North Omaha that's just, trying to work 3 jobs to make sure that her kid is able to go to a good school and have the health insurance that she needs to make sure that she takes care of her family. You can start really bridging these gaps. And Reverend Barber is doing this with the Poor People's Campaign. And this is not, I often try to tell people the Democratic Party and as Democratic candidates, you don't have to be a conservative in order to win in a quote unquote red and rural state. What you have to be is authentic and you have to be honest and you have to let people know where there are differences. There are cultural differences around guns. In rural communities, we see guns as tradition, as in hunting, and often in urban communities, it's really a sign of violence and community hurt and a lot of pain that has been inflicted on communities. And so we have to be honest that there are differences, but we also have to be honest that the Republicans and big corporations want to keep us wedged against each other. They want to see us continuing to see each other as the other because they know that there's so much more that unites us economically than these big corporations want us to believe.